Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope all are doing. Welcome to the series of learning TypeScript. So here we are on the part of learning how to integrate TypeScript and React together in order to get a really awesome result out of TypeScript. So if you're familiar with React and you have been using JavaScript for a really long time, it's time for you to move on into a typing system, and which is to use TypeScript with React. So you're just going to enjoy each part of using TypeScript and React straight all the way. You are going to enjoy using it and integrating it together because it's just going to make your life easier, and you're going to understand how everything or each part of React works, the rendering, the components, and the properties, the states, everything, how it works, and how it's being injected into React components, and how it's being rendered into the actual DOM. So you're gonna understand each part of this. I'm just gonna go ahead and use React and create a React project and try to show you and make you understand actually what is the power or is the point of powers of using TypeScript with React. You can just go ahead and check out the documentation right there for the TypeScript, like using the GSX. If you're not familiar with the GSX, you should probably, since you're a React developer, since GSX is the code you write, so the div. So when you integrate XML in the JavaScript, which is an HTML, by the way, so you can take a look on here how to use it professionally, or you can just go ahead into the tutorial section and you can find a React and Webpack and how you can use React and Webpack alongside TypeScript in order to create your project. So this tutorial shows you step by step how to do that. It's the same thing we're going to do in here and more. So this one shows you how to build and stuff and to integrate them all together. So we already done this with Webpack and stuff. We only just need some configuration. Also, I'm just gonna make you understand the base thing about using a typing system with React and TypeScript. So let's just jump right into our application, the application that we have created and that have been using the whole series right now. So remember that we have gone into the webpack.config.js, and this is the configuration. It's just going to work fine with React, so we only need to include React. One thing I need to mention before starting this video tutorial is you need to at least know the basic stuff about React in order to get into this video tutorial and understand it. If you're not, and if you really want to learn React and start working with React from the next projects, I have a full tutorial series on my website. So just go to IPNOS, type in React right there on the search bar right there, and you're gonna let's create a modern React form. You can get it started with the Flux and stuff like this, and make sure to go ahead and learn. There's a full course series on how React works. So make sure to go ahead and see that in order to understand how everything pretty much works. Then jump back into this video tutorial. So as we're talking about, this is the main app we're gonna work on. So we're gonna need to install a couple of things first. So make sure to go ahead and run npm install react and react-dom. So this is the basic thing to install whenever you try to create a React project. So make sure just to install them and save them as a real dependency, and everything should work pretty much fine for you. After installing them, I already did this, of course, just for the sake of this video tutorial. Install also the typing system. Let me just show you why you need to do this. So let's just go ahead and say that we want to import in here React. So let's see React from React, and it just should just give us an error right out of the box. And if you just go ahead and over this, it goes modular has no default exports. This is my main reason behind this. So if you have been using JavaScript in Babel for compiling React code into a real JavaScript code, so Babel uses the default export as the normal ESX export, but while here we are using the awesome TypeScript reloader, it doesn't require this, it doesn't use this. So what you should do in here, you should use the asterisk or the wildcard and name it as. So you should import all, this is what I mean, import all and as a React. So we just assign a name to all the variables. So this is going to be a namespace holding everything in this library. So you should use this on React, and also do this for the React DOM, since they are the same thing. So probably you should do this for this as well, and everything should pretty much work fine. So here I've already installed the typing system. So for you, for the first time, just gonna get another error in here. Tells you that there is no modulars, or there's no typed modulars for the React and React DOM. So what you need to do, this the TypeScript, so the TypeScript need this type in or this type's modular in order to get the full power of TypeScript and let it work like the interlicense and stuff, and let it like do its work and check for the typing and check for the functions and all of that. So it needs the typing system. So most of the libraries offer this. With any library, like React, it has its own types, like Express, it has its own types, any other library. But there are my like third-party libraries that doesn't include this. So yeah, it's a bit agony. You can create them by yourself, or you can just go ahead and ignore them. But for React and React DOM, they already include this. So to install like a library for any third-party library, or for any other package or module, like in here, React, you just use the @types, now /. So this is like the @types represent the whole repository for the types of all the libraries, and also we need the types for the React DOM. So make sure to install this to get the full power of React and React DOM when using TypeScript. So make sure to just go ahead and do this, install them, and everything should work pretty much fine for you. So after doing this, and one thing I forget to tell you is you have to install them as a dev dependency, since you're only going to use them as only under the development. So as you can see in here, so if you just go ahead and see this, they are under the dev dependencies, while the React and React DOM are under the real dependencies. Now, as you can see, quite basic and quite simple. Let's just go ahead and first start by creating a component on React and TypeScript. So all we do is like a normal thing, as we do normally in React, we create a component. Let's just go ahead and name it app, and as you do normally, you need to extend from the React.components. So it's pretty normal, pretty basic. You can use it that way, but you need to use like the if you want to use props in this component in the state, you have to include them by yourself. So let's just go ahead and say that we want to use it regularly in here. We need the props, and obviously just going to give us the like an error that the props are not defined, since you need to provide like a types for this props, since we are on the TypeScript obviously. And let's just go ahead and put a render method right there to check, and just return something like dev, and here's the first error that we have got. So here, whenever we try to use the dev, it's just gonna like not recognize this XML or HTML under the TypeScript. So it doesn't recognize the TSX, or better should I call the GSX. So to do that, we need to first change the type or the file extension. So as you can see here, .ts with .typescript. So for using GSX or for using TSX in here, we have to change it to TSX. So as soon as we do this, just like change this. If we just go to Visual Studio Code, as you can see, TypeScript reacts, and it should recognize this right now perfectly. So if we try to put a dev in here, it shouldn't just do any problem for us, and everything should look pretty much fine. Let's say like just the hello or H1 welcome or something. So let's say like we are having the props, we have a variable called name. So let's go ahead and use this. So as we normally do in JavaScript, we use this .name.props or this .props.name. I don't know why I use this. And let's say like we have, I don't know, something like, okay, let's just go ahead and use a props for now, and we will see. So for the first things first, what we noticed first is that the name, if we try to hover that, the name, okay, it doesn't want me. So the name property does not exist on the type read only, which basically means it doesn't exist on the props. Why that happens? Because we haven't provided any interface or any types to the props for the component to use. So we have to do that if we're willing to use any props or any state on a component when using TypeScript and React together. So first things first, you've always need to provide an interface specifically for the props whenever you try to create a component for this. So always make sure to go ahead and create an interface above this and name it up the same component name, then plus whatever, or plus props. So just to make it obvious for you and easier for you to understand and read and find them whenever you have your whole or large code base. So you're just gonna make your life easier. So up.props, and here we're gonna provide the props we are going to use. In this case, just gonna be name, and we're just gonna give it a string, since the name is gonna be a string. Now, how we can just tell this component should use this up.props. So this component is generic components, as we have talked about generic components in the second tutorial or something, we said that use the template. So yeah, you need to like use brackets in here and tell them what they need to use. If you can go ahead and hover the component, you can clearly see that it takes first as a P, then the second as S. This one, it doesn't really matter for us. So P stands for props, the second one stands for the state. So the first thing we need to provide is up.props. Pretty obvious. And the second one is a state. For now, we'll just emit this. And here we also, the props, we need to provide the type system. Now, as you can see, the first thing we notice is that there is no errors. All the errors has gone, and we have the props.name now does exist, and everything should pretty much work fine for now. It just have no problems, nothing at all. So here, let's just go ahead and try to render this to the DOM. So we do this like normally using the React DOM.render method, and we are using elements, which is the up. And the up obviously requires the name as a prop, so just gonna go ahead and put it like Stateless or something like this. And the second thing we need to provide is the container we want. So as I told you before, you should know what React uses. And here we can just take a look. I've already created an index.html into the distribution folder, so we can use this index.html to like show up the web page. If you just go with index.html, creating a root container to render or to be the React's container, and we have included the up.js right over there. So yeah, you should already be familiar with that. So make sure to go ahead and watch the React tutorial series, and everything should pretty much work for you fine. Now we need to go back and run the watch. So before running the watch, remember that we have changed the up.tsx from Typescript, the extension, to TSX. So we need to also change this into the Webpack configuration and save everything. Now we can run npm run watch, and everything should pretty much work fine with no problem, and it should recognize Typescript and layout it successfully with React, obviously. So yeah, everything should look pretty much fine and should work gorgeously. So wait for a second, and here we have the up.typescript. Save it again, and just like give it a couple of seconds, and make sure to run the server. I'm using live server extension. Make sure to go ahead and grab it if you really want it. And here as you can see, if we try to like refresh this, and here we go, we've got React working with Typescript. Welcome Islam Pinwis, and it uses the props. Everything is working absolutely fine. So no problems, nothing at all, and we have managed to create our first component using Typescript and React together. So as you can see, it's quite simple, quite basic, and we've used it something like an advanced way. We've understood like why we need to use props and how to include them on a generic component class, and how to use them like the proper way, and use all of the different things. Now let's just go ahead and use, let's say that there is a state for this component, and this is gonna be like this dot state, and this state, let's say like there is a count and it's a number, so it starts from 0. So as you can see at this point, everything worked pretty much fine. Let's go ahead and see like this P. Okay, let's just put a P in here. Let's put in a count, and I'm gonna use this state.count, and as soon as I do this, it's just gonna give me an error. It tells that property count does not exist on the state. That's, you guessed it right, yes, because the state doesn't have a typing system. Also, if you're using state for the component, you have to provide the types for the state. So make sure to do that using the up.state. Name it the same one. Make sure to use this like this naming convention for making your life easier and making it like easier for you to understand, or for any of the developers you're working with. So it's just gonna make it super easier for you to understand and like go through your code. So here let's just say counts and just type this one, so number. And also, as I've told you, you need to provide the second one. So up.state should go, up.props should go first, then upstate should go second, and everything should look pretty much fine. Now if we can take the count, here is looking absolutely gorgeous with no problems, nothing at all. So here, if we try to Control S, and we go back, we just refresh this for a second, and we get the count starts from 0, and yada yada yada. So you can use here like a button to toggle this and just increment this each time, and yada yada. You can do plenty of things using, like, you can use normal React in here. But the basic things about TypeScript and React, here we are. So you always need to use types like an interfaces, the prompts, and the state for any React component you create. Now let's just go ahead and see the actual React stateless component. So if you're familiar with React, you always, or like you should have been through React stateless functional components. So like if you remember, like a function, me or something takes a props, then it can return any div and something, it can render it. This is the stateless functional component. So if you're JavaScript and you've been using React for JavaScript for a really long time, you already know that and you've like used it for a couple of times, but you're not actually familiar with it and you didn't actually understand what it does. So let's just go ahead and walk you through this. So they are like a stateless functional components, which basically means they are stateless, where it does actually mean there's no state for this component. So this component only has props. It doesn't have state. It has no state management at all. So that's why it's called stateless functional component. So you call it by creating a variable in here whenever you're using React with TypeScript. So let's say like gonna be like stateless component just for short, and it's gonna be a constant. I'm just gonna like inherit from a type, specific type React does provide us. So it's gonna be React.sfc. You guessed it right. It stands for stateless functional component. So this SFC takes like a generic type, and here you should provide it with a props. For now, let's just go ahead and use any, and then equal a normal function. So normal function takes a props as well. For now, any, and it's just gonna be like this one. So here it should return something, and I just go ahead and return like an h3 hello stateless functional components. See, easy peasy. So as you can see, quite simple to create a stateless functional component. It doesn't have state or something. Let's go ahead and say that this one does have a props. So it's the same way you provide props as props or something, and you can provide this to, I don't know, like state or status of boolean, and you can provide this. So make sure to use this into the props as well. So sprops inherits from, and you also need to provide this to sprops under the SFC template, and everything should pretty much work fine. And here we can just render, say if props dot status if this. So just gonna say yeah, else just gonna say no. On the quite basic. So as you can see in here, so the status is going to be that, and let's say like for our components in here, we have the props, we have the name props, but the name props is not actually mandatory, so it's not required, it's an optional thing. So to represent an optional thing on a type, on interfaces on TypeScript, you use the question mark before the colon. So you put a question mark, then a colon. That means this attribute is optional. So you do not have to provide this attribute, but you still can provide it to the actual components. There's no problem, but you still not required at all. So here we try to, like, whenever we are rendering, we can just go ahead and emit this name, and it should just like find this name. This .props.name would be null. So this one is going to be null. So it just renders nothing. So to provide this, let's go ahead and say we say like if this is like null, what we need is to use like a default properties we define on our class. We can also use default properties with TypeScript and React. So to do that, just like use the static method and like put it like default props on the class scope of whatever components. It's not provided under the SFC or status function component. It's only under the real components, and you give it default props and equals, of course, and this should just give us like an actual default props. Let's say the name is going to be by default Alex or something like this. So yeah, it's going to be Alex by default if it's not provided at all, and you should just go ahead and see this. Let's just go and see that we want to render the stateless. Let me just copy this very quickly. So it's going to be stateless components, and as you can see, it takes a status as a boolean, so we can put status, and I'm just going to put a true on the status. So yeah, quite basic, quite simple, nothing that much. And as you can see in here, if we just like remove the name, it doesn't give us any errors or something because it's an optional. As you can see, if we try to remove this one, it's just gonna pop up and give us like the name is missing in type of an object. So let's just go ahead and revert this back. Control S to save, and let me just take this a bit and go back here, refresh, And hello, I'm a stateless function and components. Yeah, since we are providing it through, as you know, and welcome Alex, of course. It changed it from Islam Anyways, and now it uses the default props instead of the props we provide by calling, or the props they actually provide whenever we try to render some components. So here's here the default properties. So as you can see, it's quite basic, quite simple to use React with TypeScript. It gives you superpowers. You can define the state, you can define the properties, you can give them you can get into the advanced level and use it however you like and manipulate the data however you pretty much like with your components, with your stateful components or stateless components. So by the way, this one called a stateful component and this one called a stateless component. So just like if you have heard or if you're actually going to read through a tutorial or something, you could just go ahead and learn more about that and you would probably be able to understand what he's doing or what he's saying. So that was actually, guys, for this video tutorial. What is basic, very simple to use React and React DOM. So I've learned about how namespaces in here, since you need to include all as React DOM for the awesome React. This layout uses this, but Babel and other layouts use the defaults. Whenever you try to export defaults, it uses this, but this one, it doesn't rely on this. So each one rely on a different pattern and so on and so forth. So you have to be fixable and know what is going on. So thank you guys for watching again, as I've told you before, and hopefully you've enjoyed the video tutorial. Make sure to put in the comments whatever you like. I'll be very appreciated. I read all of the comments, even though I can't just reply to each one of them, but I really enjoy reading through your comments, your appreciative comments. And yeah, hopefully, guys, I will catch you all in the next video tutorial.